Good day, guys. Welcome back to the course. And previously, we talked about constructing a parsing table for our predictive parser. In this case, we are just going to do one exercise, and that should help buttress the entire thing we discussed earlier. And before, let's just get right into it. We have a grammar. E derives T E prime. E also derives plus E prime plus E, not plus E prime, plus E and empty. That's E prime. T derives uh, T derives F T prime. T prime derives T or MT. And note that this is not left recursive. This is not left recursive. Then because ChatGPT can tell you it's left recursive, I tried once. He told me it's left recursive. F derives PF prime. F prime derives star F prime and empty, and then P derives E in parentheses A, B, and empty. So this is what we have. This is what we have. I'll scale that down. Okay, so first of all, we need to compute the first and the follow function for this. So let's just say the non-terminal, the first, and the follow function. We need to get rid of this before we can actually do the construction of the table. So E prime, T prime, F prime, and P. So we have all that. Now let's talk about the first and the follow of these guys. So look at this with me. E derives T E prime. What does T derive? T derives F. What does F derive? F derives P. And what does P derive? P derives open parenthesis E close parenthesis, but the first of P is open parenthesis, and there's another alternative which is A and B and empty. So the first of E will contain open parenthesis A, B, and empty. Moving on to E prime. What is the first of E prime? We have a plus here, thankfully, and we have an empty. So the plus and empty make up the first of E prime. What about T? T derives F T prime. What does F derive? P. What does P derive? Open parenthesis A, B, and empty. So we put that in the first of T, A, B, and empty. Now, what about T prime? T prime has T, which also derives F, and F derives P, and P derives the following. We have open parenthesis A, B, and E prime. F also derives P, and P derives that. So we have open parenthesis A, B, E prime. What about F prime? What does F prime derive? F prime derives star F prime, and then we know that there's a star and then there's an empty, and those are going to be in our first. Now what about P? P is the one that actually truly derived all these guys, which everybody else stole. So open parenthesis A, B, and empty, and thus we have completed the first. The follow isn't usually that simple, but we know from the first rule that the dollar sign is going to be in the start symbol, so we have that. Now, if you look for the sentential forms with E, what is immediately following after? If we check E prime, we notice that the only thing is E plus E, and there's nothing following immediately to the right. This is to the left, so plus won't cut it, but to the right we have that. So what next as a sentential form? P derives open parenthesis E close parenthesis, so we can work with this. What is following to the right? We have the close parenthesis, so we are going to take that and put that in the follow of E. Now remember what we did say about these guys. So I'm just going to get down to business of manipulation, which we did that time. If it was confusing, I suggest watching the video again. So now let's consider the options we have. We have T derives E prime. We are trying to get to E prime now. Now E prime also derives plus E and then empty, but we'll just put empty to the side. Now remember what I said about A derives alpha and B, and that ignoring this alpha now, what is in the follow of A is in the follow of B. So the follow of what is in the follow of E will be in the follow of E prime. So therefore we have this. The manipulations are crazy, but yes, just try and follow me. So we have that. Now moving on to T. The first thing we will notice is that using that same the principle we had before of A, alpha, B, and beta, and we say that, let's say beta is, in this case, there's nothing there, so beta is empty. No, what we can say, let's not do that. Let me clean that up. I need to create more space so I can think properly. So we have T, E prime. Now, A derives alpha, B, and beta. And what did we say? We say whatever is in the first of beta is going to be in this, but I'm not trying to get to T. Back to E. E derives T E prime. I'm actually going to T. I've done E prime. All right, we are moving on T. We're actually on T. So I was correct before. That was just weird. Now, so the first of beta is going to be in the follow of T. Now the beta here is E prime, and what is in the first of E prime? Plus. So plus is going to be in the follow of T. But is that all? Let's look through again. I'll clean this up. It's getting rough. I'll clean it. It's getting rough. So look again. We have E derives T E prime. Now remember what we said about A derives alpha, big B, and beta. And if beta, the first of beta, has an empty, then we can see the follow of E is in the follow of T, right? So now look at the first of beta, and what is beta here? Beta is E prime, and considering that there is nothing here which is empty, we can use that as our alpha. Now, what is in the first? What is in the first of no, it's not. We're not even talking about the first of B. What's in the first of beta, which is E? The first of beta has an empty, and in that law, because the first of beta has an empty, whatever is in the follow of A is also in the follow of B. So whatever is in the follow of A, which is E here, is going to be in the follow of T. So the follow of E consists of the close parenthesis and the dollar sign. So we are just going to kidnap those, steal those and put that into this place. So we have the plus, the close parenthesis, and the dollar sign. Now we move on to T prime. So what do we have? Let's start considering the sentential forms that T prime shows up in. We have T derives Ft prime, and then T prime derives T and MT, but let's just put the MT to the side because we don't need that now. And T prime derives T. So looking at this, let's say we have alpha, B, and beta. Remembering the first rule, we can say that let's not use alpha. Let's use alpha and beta, since we don't want to create this long space. We want to use some manipulations again. So we can simply say that what is in the follow of A is in the follow of B according to the rules that we're given. So whatever is in the follow of T is going to be in the follow of T prime. Automatically we have plus, close parenthesis, and the dollar sign, all stolen by T prime. Now let us look at F. What does F have? From the sentential forms that we can see, T derives Ft prime. Now, what do we say about A derives alpha, B, and beta? We can say that the first of beta is going to be in the follow of B. So what is in the first of T prime? In the first of T prime, we have open parenthesis A, B, and empty. So we are going to ignore the empty because we are not supposed to pack the empty along, but we'll pack all of these guys and put it in the follow of F. So what does that give us? We are going to have open parenthesis A, B, and okay. So we have that given to us. What else can we do? What else can we do? What else can we do? Now, remember we have this A derives alpha, beta, B and beta, and we can say that if beta contains empty, like the first of beta rather contains empty, then what is in A is going to be in the follow of A is going to be in the follow of B, right? How do we apply that to this funny guy over here? We can say that there's an empty here which is going to represent our alpha. This is going to be our B and this is going to be our beta. So is there an empty in the first of T prime? There is an empty in the first of T prime. Therefore, what is in the follow of T is in the follow of F. So what is in the follow of T? We have plus, close parenthesis and dollar sign. So we take all of those plus parenthesis and dollar sign and we put it here. So we have handled for F. How about F prime? So I'm just going to go back and then look for the sentential forms that have F prime in them. So F derives PF prime. What does this now look like? What can we do? What can we do? What can we do? What can we do? Remember what we had before of A derives alpha, big B, and beta. We don't need to use that because we can just say A derives alpha and B. So what do we say? We say that the follow of A is in the follow of B. So in the follow of F is going to be in the follow of F prime. So what do we have? We have open parenthesis A, B plus close parenthesis and the star. And the dollar sign, not star. Dollar sign, not star. Now, finally, we are on the last entry. Okay, we're on the last entry. Okay, we're on the last entry. P. Now let's look for the sentential forms that P appears in. F derives P F prime. Now, what can we say if we have A derives alpha, big B, and beta? They say that it's empty here, alpha is empty here, big B is P, and this is F prime is beta. We can say that the first of F prime is going to be in the follow of P. So what is in the first of F prime? We have the star and we have empty, but we are going to ignore the empty and just use only the star. So we are having star first. Okay. So again, we can manipulate. Let's just create room. F derives PF prime. What can we do again? We can say that alpha is empty here, big B is P, and then this is beta. And now let's check. In the first of F prime, is there an empty? Yes, there's an empty. So what do we say? The follow of F is going to be in the follow of P. So what do we have? We have everything here is going to be here. And everything here rather is going to be here. So we are just going to copy all of those. Open parenthesis A, B, plus, close parenthesis, and dollar sign. And that should constitute all of our entries here. So I'm just going to clean off some of the working. No, I won't clean off that. I'm going to just create a new page so that we can refer back to these guys. So now what does the table look like? Remember, the table will have non-terminal and input symbols. Input symbol. So the non-terminals, I'm just going to have that. And then I'm going to do this. And the input symbols in this case, we have, what are the terminals? We have A, we have B, we have plus, we have star. Let me make them wider. A, B, plus, star, open, close, and dollar sign. I think that's all. So create enough room. We have A, we have B, we have plus, let's make more space here, we have that, okay, let's create more space here, and then we have the dollar sign. So what are the non-terminals? We have we have E prime, we have T, we have T prime, we have F, we have F prime, and then we have P. Let's just make there enough space. So let's just do this. We connect all of this to create boxes. Okay. So looking at our first here, this is our first. This is our first. This is our follow. When we are first putting in the entries, we look at our first and we take the the productions and we put them into the first as they are to be. And then when we get to things where the entries are unique, we look for the entries that match the input symbols and then we fit those in. I'm going to do the example and let's get started again. So the first of E is open parenthesis A, B, E. And what is the production? E derives T, E prime. So we are just going to put E derives T, E prime everywhere we're supposed to put this, but we can't put it in the empty because empty doesn't have an entry column. So back to this, we're going to just simply put E derives T, E prime on A, E derives T, E prime on B, E derives T, E prime on open parenthesis. And I think that's all we have for that, for the first. Now going back to this, what is the next on the list? We have E derives T. The production is E prime derives plus E and empty, but we don't have a place to put empty yet. We are going to have to put whatever entry is matching the input symbol in the first. So back to our table, E prime derives plus E is what we put in the plus column. So in the plus column, E prime derives plus E. The empties will be dealt with later using the follow function. So moving on to T. T derives Ft prime. But where are the follows? The follows consist of open parenthesis A, B. Now I go back. T derives Ft prime. T derives Ft prime. T derives Ft prime again, and then T derives Ft prime. Moving on to T prime. T prime derives T and empty. T prime derives T and empty. But where is it appearing? It's appearing on open parenthesis AB. For now, we will not consider the empty, so we'll go back. So T prime derives T. T prime derives T on A. T prime derives T on B. T prime derives T on open parenthesis. Now we move on to F. F derives PF prime, but where is the first? The first is the same as the others before them. Not C, open parenthesis AB. So we go back. So what do we have? F derives PF prime, and F derives PF prime again, and F derives PF prime one more time. And I think that is that with that, dealing with the first now. Moving on to F prime. Moving on to f prime. F prime derives star f prime and empty. So ignoring, where does it appear? It appears on the star. So we go back here. On the star entry we have f prime derives star f prime, and then that's all for the first, and then go back for p. So p derives open and close parenthesis e, a, b, and empty. So we just take these guys and we'll put them in the tables, that in the columns that comply with them. So we are going to put p derives open e prime close parenthesis for this guy over here. We do p derives a for a, p derives b for b. So we'll go back, and then we have that p derives a, p derives b, and p derives open e close. So we have established for the first. Now what about the follow? For the follow, you have to consider the productions, the empty productions in the grammar. So what have empty productions here? E does not have an empty production, but E prime has an empty production. T doesn't have an empty production, but T prime has an empty production. F does not have an empty production, but F prime has an empty production. So the only places where we'll be using the follows for adding empty productions will be for those with empty productions in them. So let's look at E prime. If we are going to put the empty productions, where do we put them? We put it in the follow. And where do we put it in the follow? We have the close parenthesis and the dollar sign. So let's just go back. So in the close parenthesis and the dollar sign, we are going to put E prime derives empty, E prime derives empty. Going back, what else would has empty productions? T prime has empty productions. T prime has empty productions. So what is in the follow of T prime? Plus closing parenthesis and dollar sign. So we will go there and look for it. So plus T prime derives empty on plus, T prime derives empty on closing parenthesis, and T prime derives empty on dollar sign. F does not have empty productions, so we leave them, but F prime has empty productions. So going back, F prime has a lot of follows. So it has we are going to put empty productions in the open parenthesis a, b, plus close parenthesis and dollar sign. So going back, we put f prime derives empty in a, f prime derives empty in b, f prime derives empty in the plus, f prime derives empty. Does it derive empty in the plus? Am I sure? Yes, it derives empty in the plus. So f prime derives empty in the open parenthesis, f prime derives empty in the close parenthesis, and f prime derives empty in the dollar sign. Finally, we have the p. The p has an empty production. That's an empty production here, and then it spans across every input symbol. So, but remember, this is an LR parser, and in this case we are dealing with an LR1. We're going to have it be like more of a 1, so we should have only one one entry, one lookout symbol, one lookahead symbol rather. We shouldn't have two of them stuck in a stuff. So we are just going to put the empty symbol, empty productions with the places that are not filled up, and then we are going to just discard the rest of them. So going back, we will put p derives empty here, p derives empty here as well, p derives empty in this space, and p derives empty here. For the places that have entries like p derives a, p derives b, p derives open and close e, we shouldn't put an empty there, because it's going to just create confusions, and it can't actually process. The parser cannot process p derives empty on these guys, not while these guys are here. So that comes to the end of this exercise. I'm going to be working on the LL parsers in no, this should be an L LL parser actually. This is not an LR parser. Pardon me for that. Where I was talking about that. This should be an LL parser. LL1, not LR. So pardon for that error, but in this case we still have the principle still standing, that we do not want having p derives empty on all these guys. We just keep p derives a, and then the places that are empty, instead of them to be error entries, that is going to be p derives empty. So it's an LL parser, not an LR parser. I need to correct that. So I think that brings us to the end of this tutorial. I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching.